and even how our very ideas spread like wildfire. Ever wonder how the intricate machinery of our economy and government operates? Often like, self-regulating systems humming beneath the surface. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into exactly that. The profound, often hidden dynamics of power.
Welcome, everyone. Our focus today is squarely on a pretty fundamental question. How do power dynamics truly influence the formation and maintenance of governance in complex systems? We're going to explore some powerful, almost mythic metaphors, like the economic Leviathan that seems to steer our markets, and the governmental Ouroboros, this image of a serpent endlessly consuming and regenerating itself. These aren't just dusty old philosophical concepts. We'll reveal how these ideas, reinforced by, modern cybernetics, play out in the daily pulse of our lives.
And to tackle this monumental subject, you've given us an incredible stack of sources. It's a truly fascinating collection. We're talking about everything from Edward Bernays' seminal and, let's be honest, often controversial work on propaganda,
Right.
to Norbert Wiener's prescient warnings from the very dawn of cybernetics. We'll draw insights from Thomas Hobbes's powerful Leviathan and Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, and then bring it right up to the present with cutting-edge analyses of government as a self-referential system. It really is a rich tapestry of thought that promises some serious aha moments, I think.
Absolutely. Our mission here is to untangle these complex ideas, connect the dots between fields that might seem disparate at first glance, and provide you with a clearer, more nuanced understanding of this invisible government that quietly but powerfully hums beneath the surface of society. This deep dive, we hope, aims to equip you to navigate our, let's face it, incredibly information-rich world with newfound clarity, making visible the forces that shape our collective reality.
Okay, so let's jump right into the heart of it, starting with a term that carries a lot of baggage: propaganda. When most of us hear that word, we probably conjure images of, I don't know, wartime posters, or maybe political speeches designed to overtly mislead. But Bernays' perspective, it really challenges that narrow view, doesn't it?
It really does.
He defines propaganda not just as, deceptive tactics, but as a consistent, enduring effort to create or shape events and influence the public's relation to an enterprise, idea, or group. The key insight here seems to be that propaganda isn't some fleeting tactic, but maybe the unseen fundamental architecture of modern influence, like a continuous strategic force shaping our reality.
Exactly. And that takes us beyond these simplistic notions of good or bad propaganda. It reveals it as an almost inevitable component of any large-scale societal function. What's truly fascinating, I think, is how universal and, frankly, how indispensable it seems to be across all facets of modern life. The sources make it pretty clear that it's considered inevitable for any significant undertaking.
Really?
Yeah, whether we're talking about grand political movements, the world of finance, manufacturing, agriculture, charity, or even the subtle shaping of educational narratives. It's not merely for grand political schemes or wartime efforts. It's woven into the very fabric of how organizations and ideas function and gain traction. Its pervasiveness suggests a far more fundamental role than we typically assume, like an underlying mechanism of societal coordination.
And this leads us to an incredibly potent phrase, one that really jumps out. Bernays deems propaganda the executive arm of the invisible government. Wow, that sounds almost conspiratorial, doesn't it? Is he suggesting some shadowy cabal pulling strings? Or is it something more systemic, perhaps less intentionally malicious, but equally powerful, shaping our society? What does he actually mean by executive arm here?
That's a crucial distinction to make. While the phrase invisible government might immediately evoke images of, I don't know, secret societies and smoke-filled rooms,
Right.
Bernays is really describing a systemic reality. He sees propaganda as the active mechanism, the limb that carries out the will of an unseen but very real power structure. It's not necessarily a centralized, malevolent cabal, but perhaps more a diffuse network of individuals and groups who, through their positions of influence and their mastery of public opinion, are able to direct society without being directly elected or formally recognized.
Okay.
These are the people who, you could say, pull the strings, not always for nefarious reasons, mind you, but simply to manage and organize the complex beast of modern society. They create the trends, the narratives, the very sense of what is normal or desirable.
That really reframes everything, doesn't it? And speaking of reframing, You'd think that universal literacy, a hallmark of modern progress, the cornerstone of an informed democracy.
You'd hope so.
You'd hope it would lead to more independent thought, right? More critical analysis from the populace. But Bernays suggests a rather unsettling outcome. He argues that instead of fostering independent thought, universal literacy has actually equipped the common man with rubber stamps.
Rubber stamps.
Yeah, meaning individuals are now equipped to absorb ideas disseminated wholesale through pervasive advertising slogans, countless editorials, maybe selective published data. It's like everyone can read, but they're mostly reading and internalizing pre-approved messages rather than, forging their own.
Precisely. And the intent behind this wholesale fashion of idea dissemination, absolutely crucial. It's
Yeah.
not about nurturing critical thinking, not really. It's explicitly designed to mold the mind of the masses so they will direct their strength in a desired direction.
Wow.
This isn't about fostering informed debate or individual introspection. It's about steering collective behavior towards predetermined outcomes. It's a calculated effort, really, to bypass deep individual analysis and instead implant ideas that will lead to a specific form of mass action or even inaction, ultimately serving the goals of the propagandist. Think of it maybe as social engineering on a grand scale.
He offers a stark, almost chilling analogy for this. Bernays says it's regimenting the public mind every bit as much as an army regiments the bodies of its soldiers. That's quite a visual. It suggests a highly organized, almost top-down control over our very thought patterns. It paints a picture of a society where individual thought isn't necessarily abolished, but rather subtly guided and channeled in a way that serves a larger, often invisible agenda. It implies a sort of systemic discipline over the very processes of perception and belief.
And this regimentation can be observed even in places we typically consider bastions of objectivity, the daily newspaper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bernays makes the surprising claim that even on page one of a major paper, a significant portion of what we perceive as news stories are in fact propaganda. The casual reader just accepts them as spontaneous happenings, organic events unfolding in the world.
Right.
But often they are carefully constructed narratives or orchestrated events designed to create a specific impression, to subtly shift public opinion. He cites headlines like 12 Nations Warn China or these kinds of things. These aren't just objective reports, but orchestrated communications. The propagandist's goal is to create the circumstances that then become news, shaping our reality before we're even aware of it.
So it's not just about direct messaging or ads, it's about setting the entire stage of public perception. The sources further state that society has consented to have free competition organized by leadership and propaganda. That phrase, consented to have free competition organized, is incredibly thought-provoking.
It is?
It implies that even our so-called free choices and market interactions are, in fact, subtly managed and directed. Are we really making independent decisions if the playing field is constantly being shaped and managed like this?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? The power lies in influencing leaders, sometimes with their conscious cooperation, sometimes without. When you can sway these key individuals, you automatically sway the groups they lead. People aren't isolated decision makers. We're profoundly influenced by our social environment. We retain patterns stamped by group influences, even when we think we're acting alone.
Uh-huh.
Moreover, propagandists understand that people are largely actuated by motives they conceal even from themselves. This is a critical insight. They don't just appeal to stated reasons or logical arguments. Instead, they aim to manipulate these true, often unconscious desires, tapping into deeper, more primal urges and motivations that we might not even be aware of ourselves. It's a much more psychological and therefore, powerful approach.
That's fascinating. So they're not just using logic, they're tapping into something far more primal and hidden. They aim to manipulate these true, often unconscious desires rather than just stated reasons. Can you give us a concrete example of how they effectively achieve that, going beyond simple surface-level appeals?
Absolutely. It's often done by creating circumstances and generating psychological and emotional currents rather than through direct logical persuasion. A perfect example Bernays gives is the promotion of velvet fashion in America.
But yeah.
Instead of directly telling people buy velvet through ads, an actual, although created circumstance was established in Paris. This involved getting Parisian couturiers to subtly feature velvet in their collections.
Ah, the influencers of the day.
Exactly. Which then gets reported by American fashion magazines and newspapers as the latest trend. This reflected news, then influenced American buyers and consumers, turning a mere trickle of velvet into a flood. The demand was slowly but deliberately created by shaping the environment, not by overt direct advertising. It's about making an idea feel organic, an inevitable cultural wave.
That's a brilliant illustration of indirect influence, making it seem like a natural evolution of taste. And it seems it's not always nefarious or entirely self-serving, right? Propaganda can also work by finding points where the interests of the propagandist's client coincide with those of other individuals or groups. So you enlist leaders who genuinely care about the cause being promoted. That implies a more collaborative, almost symbiotic relationship sometimes.
Indeed. And another incredibly powerful technique is the strategic use of cliches or images, which stand for a whole group of ideas or experiences.
Mental shortcuts.
Exactly. They bypass deeper reasoning and trigger immediate emotional responses. Think of how easily a political candidate could be tagged with the word interests to sway millions against them, simply because interest had, for a time, come to represent corruption or self-serving motives.
Right, I remember that.
Or how the word Bolshevik was used to frighten the public into a particular line of action during the Red Scare. Bernays even recounts how changing the name of hospitals to evacuation posts during World War I instantly shifted public perception of care. Hospital implied long-term care, but evacuation posts conditioned people to expect only temporary emergency treatment. These subtle linguistic shifts are incredibly potent.
This deep understanding of public psychology leads to the rise of a new kind of professional, the Public Relations Council. Bernays describes them not as mere admin, but as sophisticated advisors who shape a client's actions, doctrines, their whole system, really, to gain public interest and support. They work intimately with modern media, understand group formations. They are, in a sense, judge and jury in the court of public opinion, tasked with interpreting the client vividly and truly through every avenue to public opinion and sometimes even modifying the client's actions to align with public sentiment. Their goal is harmony between the client and the public.
And we see powerful historical examples of this invisible government operating effectively behind the scenes. Bernays points to figures like Mark Hanna, who, without holding formal executive office, wielded immense influence, practically dictating national policies from behind the scenes.
Wow.
He also mentions the legendary Invisible Cabinet deliberating at the poker table in Washington, where major policies and political strategies were often decided through informal influence and persuasion rather than through official channels. These historical anecdotes vividly highlight how power can operate effectively and decisively outside of formal structures, through persuasion, influence, and the orchestration of public opinion, truly demonstrating the profound reach of propaganda as that executive arm.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's move from let's call it the art of influence, to a more scientific lens for understanding control and how these complex systems operate. We're moving into the realm of cybernetics. Norbert Wiener, widely regarded as the founder of cybernetics, defined it as the science of control and communication in animals and machines. At its core, it's about steersmanship, feedback, and control in systems. The real insight here is that this isn't just about robotics or computers, right? It's a powerful framework for understanding how anything, a biological organism, a complex societal structure, functions. It emphasizes the flow of information as the key.
Precisely. Wiener's groundbreaking work was deeply influenced by Claude Shannon's information theory, which provided a mathematical basis for quantifying information as the reduction of uncertainty. This concept is transformative because it provides a universal language, a sort of meta-discipline, to analyze the behavior of incredibly diverse systems. Whether you're looking at the intricate communication within a human nervous system, the automated processes in a factory, or complex decision-making of a social organization, you can apply the same conceptual tools. This abstract approach allows for profound insights into how order emerges, how systems learn, and how stability is maintained in the face of constant change.
Okay, with that foundational understanding, we can now delve into the first type of cybernetics, which provides a powerful lens for understanding this idea of the economic Leviathan. In first-order cybernetics, the focus is very much on external control and goal-seeking behavior.
Right, the observers outside.
Exactly. It's all about those feedback loops, where a system's output influences its future actions to maintain stability or reach a set goal. Think of a thermostat in your home. It senses the temperature, output, compares it to your desired setting, goal, and then turns the furnace on or off, influences future actions to maintain that stability. Classic feedback loop, controlled from the outside.
And this brings us to a crucial principle from cybernetics, W. Ross Ashby's law of requisite variety.
Okay, requisite variety.
It states that for a control system to be effective, it must possess at least as much variety, meaning possible states or responses, as the system it regulates.
So complexity needs complexity.
Essentially, yes. Think of it this way. Trying to manage the complex, unpredictable traffic flow of a bustling city with just a single, simple traffic light system wouldn't work.
No, definitely not.
The city's traffic, with accidents, rush hours, road closures, diverse drivers, has too much variety for such a simple control mechanism. You need complex adaptive systems, like smart traffic grids, that can respond to a multitude of scenarios. This law emphasizes that simplistic solutions inevitably fail when dealing with complex social or economic problems because they simply lack the necessary requisite variety to respond effectively.
This idea that a system needs sufficient variety to control its environment, it aligns perfectly with Thomas Hobbes's concept of the Leviathan.
Ah, yes, Hobbes.
He conceived of the state as an artificial man, or an automaton, explicitly designed to impose order on chaos. It's almost a proto-cybernetic view of control, isn't it? Where a single powerful sovereign entity is meant to steer the ship of state, preventing it from capsizing in the turbulent waters of human nature.
Absolutely. Hobbes argued that without such a sovereign power, humanity lives in a miserable condition of war, where every man is against every man, driven by competition, diffidence, mistrust, and the pursuit of glory.
Right.
The Leviathan, this all-powerful state, is created for perpetual security, designed to compel obedience through fear of punishment, to uphold natural laws like justice and equity. Its purpose is to overcome the inherent drives that lead to conflict in a state of nature. It's the ultimate control mechanism to prevent societal entropy, using the feedback of punishment to ensure compliance and order.
And Hobbes was very clear about the indivisible nature of this sovereign power. He insisted that the sovereign's rights are incommunicable and inseparable.
I'll break it up.
Exactly. You can't separate the power to coin money from the command of the militia or the judiciary from the power to raise money. He warned explicitly that if you divide these powers, a kingdom divided in itself cannot stand. It has to be a unified, all-encompassing control system to be effective. Otherwise, it risks unraveling back into that state of nature he so feared.
Applying this first-order cybernetic lens, even Adam Smith's famous invisible hand, and the role of price signals in the economy can be understood as decentralized cybernetic feedback loops.
Ah, interesting connection.
Prices aren't just numbers. They are powerful information signals communicating the state of the entire system. A rising price for a commodity, for example, is an error signal, communicating a mismatch between supply and demand. This information is fed back to producers, prompting them to increase supply, and to consumers who might reduce their demand, thus driving the system back toward equilibrium.
Without a central planner.
Exactly. It's a self-regulating mechanism operating at a vast scale, constantly adjusting through feedback. This is how the economy functions as a kind of Leviathan, a vast self-regulating entity dictating resource flow and production through these mechanisms.
Okay, fast forward to today, and we have what's been called the new digital Leviathan.
Yep.
Think of global digital platforms like Amazon or Walmart, or maybe even financial algorithms.
Huge ecosystems.
Yeah. These aren't just companies, they're supercharged control systems. They leverage real-time data, sophisticated algorithms, and even surveillance capitalism, collecting and monetizing our behavioral data to achieve centralized control over vast economic ecosystems. They predict and even subtly shape our behavior with incredible precision, from the ads we see to the products we're offered. It's like an evolution of that first-order control, operating at an unprecedented scale and speed, making the economic Leviathan more powerful, more omnipresent than ever.
And what's particularly striking, maybe even a bit chilling, is that this digital Leviathan is becoming increasingly autopoietic.
Autopoietic. Self-creating.
Self-creating, self-maintaining, yes. Think of a living organism.
Yeah.
It constantly regenerates itself, repairs itself, maintains its own identity using its internal processes. That's autopoiesis. Here, it means this system operates according to its own internal logic of algorithmic optimization and profit maximization, often quite independent of direct human or political intervention.
Like it has a mind of its own.
Almost. It's like a corporate AI that has learned how to perpetuate and grow itself, defining its own rules as it goes. It's a self-sustaining system, generating its own processes, maintaining its existence, driven by its own internal code, constantly adapting and optimizing itself through its own closed loop of information. This deep autonomy makes it a formidable, almost unchallengeable force.
Right. Okay, now let's move beyond that first-order external control model to something even more complex and perhaps a bit mind-bending. Second-order cybernetics.
The observer steps inside.
Exactly. This introduces a crucial shift. Here, the observer is placed inside the system itself. We recognize that in social contexts, the very act of studying, measuring, or attempting to steer a system inevitably alters it. It's about reflexivity, self-reference, acknowledging the tangled nature of observation and action. There's no truly objective viewpoint outside the system you're trying to understand.
And because the observer is inside, these systems generate their own realities and goals from within, rather than having them imposed externally. This perspective is absolutely essential for understanding government as an autonomous, operationally closed system, what we're calling the governmental Ouroboros.
The snake eating its tail.
Precisely. Think of it like a highly specialized department and a company that only understands its own internal reports and jargon. An external problem or crisis isn't just seen as it is. It's immediately translated, filtered, and reshaped into the department's own internal language and frameworks before it can even be processed or acted upon. It's a system that defines itself and its purpose, constantly recreating its own boundaries and logic, often filtering out or reshaping anything that doesn't fit its internal narrative. This self-referential nature is why it's an Ouroboros. It feeds on itself, for itself.
This brings us directly to Nicholas Luhmann's theory, which is key here.
Luhmann, yes.
He posits that social systems are essentially networks of communication that are operationally closed. They produce new communications based on prior ones, and they process external events only through their own internal logic and codes. So an external crisis, a new scientific discovery, a shift in public opinion, it isn't simply absorbed raw, it's interpreted and reshaped by the system's own established language and internal frameworks before it can become meaningful within that system. It's like a constant internal conversation, insulated from direct external manipulation.
This, then, is the essence of the Ouroboros analogy. The system feeds on itself, processing the outside world only by turning it into the food of its own internal language. The political system, for instance, specializes in producing collectively binding decisions. It operates through the communication medium of power and a binary code of government opposition, or power-non-power.
That binary code.
Yeah, it constantly uses power to generate more power, to legitimize its own decisions, and to define its own problems and solutions, reflecting the Ouroboros' self-consuming and regenerating nature. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of political communication and decision-making, where the system's primary concern is its own maintenance and operation.
And to make this a bit more tangible, Stafford Beer's viable system model, or VSM, provides an operational blueprint for how such a self-organizing, self-maintaining system can actually be effective and survive in complexity.
Beer's VSM, right.
It details 5 essential interacting functions, from execution right up to strategy and recursive or nested structures, mirroring that fractal-like imagery of the Ouroboros. It's like a blueprint for systemic resilience and adaptability, showing how such a self-referential system can actually manage itself in a complex environment.
A truly fascinating, albeit controversial, real-world example of VSM in action was Project Cybersyn in Chile during the early 1970s.
Ah, Cybersyn. I've heard of this.
Yeah, it was an ambitious attempt under Salvador Allende's socialist government to cybernetically manage the state's internal metabolism, the national economy. They aimed to create a real-time dynamic control system. Factories would report production data acting as System 1 units, feeding information up a hierarchy. Government ministers, embodying System 5, would set strategic policy goals. And there was this futuristic central operations room, the ops room, designed to visualize and react to the national economic situation in near real time.
Wow.
It sought to achieve dynamic control over a national economy, treating the entire country almost like a single organism to be steered. A real attempt to apply these cybernetic principles to governance.
And within the VSM, we can look at some of its internal functions to see how the self-organization works. For example, System 2 coordinates the internal units, prevents conflict through regulations, shared information.
Like preventing bureaucratic turf wars.
Exactly, preventing 2 government departments from inadvertently competing for the same resources or working at cross purposes. Then, System 3 is the internal management. Setting rules, allocating resources, auditing performance. Think of powerful institutions like a state's treasury, the civil service management, or even an internal audit office. These ensure day-to-day operations align with the system's internal goals and maintain its viability. These are like the organs that keep the Ouroboros healthy and functioning.
Right, it's about internal coherence and stability.
So now we have these two incredibly powerful dynamic subsystems within society, the governmental Ouroboros and the economic Leviathan. They're clearly not isolated entities operating in separate spheres, are they? They must be constantly rubbing up against each other, influencing each other.
No, absolutely not isolated. They are structurally coupled, which is a key concept here.
Structurally coupled.
It means they remain internally autonomous, each operating according to its own distinct logic and codes, but they constantly irritate or perturb each other. Think of it like two adjacent ecosystems influencing each other's climate or species distribution, even while maintaining their distinct internal rules.
Okay.
This mutual perturbation forces continuous adaptation and coevolution. One system's output, say, a new law from the government or a market crash in the economy, becomes an input or a challenge for the other, creating this dynamic, interconnected dance that shapes the whole of society.
And this structural coupling creates a fascinating, almost existential battle of codes.
A battle of codes.
The state, as the Ouroboros, tries to impose its power-non-power code through laws, regulations, policy decisions, defining what's permissible, what's forbidden. Meanwhile, the economy, the Leviathan, translates all this political activity into its own payment-non-payment code.
Right. Regulations become costs, taxes or deductions. Elections might be seen as investment risks or opportunities.
Exactly. This clash of distinct internal logics effectively defines modern political economy. Governance becomes a constant negotiation, sometimes a struggle, between these fundamentally different ways of valuing and processing information.
And this brings us to a concerning trend, particularly in the digital age, a profound convergence of these control mechanisms. Governments are increasingly adopting what's termed cybernetic governance with algorithmic control.
Algorithmic governance.
We see this manifesting in initiatives like smart cities, where vast amounts of data are collected and analyzed to manage urban life traffic flow, resource allocation, you name it, or even in social credit systems, managing societal behavior with unprecedented precision. This represents a new level of sophisticated, data-driven, top-down control, where governance seeks to become an ever-optimizing predictive system.
And at the same time, we're seeing massive economic platforms developing their own governance structures and private sovereignty akin to states.
Private sovereignty.
Yeah, think of how major tech companies like Google or Facebook set rules and adjudicate disputes for billions of users. Or how large e-commerce platforms like Amazon dictate terms for vast networks of businesses and individuals who depend on them. These massive private entities are, in effect, becoming governing powers themselves, creating their own spheres of influence and control that often rival or even supersede the authority of traditional nation-states.
And this fusion of governmental cybernetics and private economic sovereignty creates what's been termed a governance market complex.
Governance market complex, okay.
This complex poses a significant threat, potentially, to human freedom and autonomy. It could compress the space for individual agency. As these systems become more optimized, more interconnected, more predictive, the room for individual choice, independent action, even genuine dissent might diminish. We could be moving towards a world where our behaviors are subtly, or maybe not so subtly, steered towards system optimization, rather than being driven by truly autonomous human will.
This brings us squarely to Foucault's powerful concept of governmentality, which offers a really profound insight into this convergence.
Foucault, yes.
It describes a form of power whose primary target isn't just a territory or a kingdom, but the population itself. Its principal knowledge is political economy, and its essential technical means are apparatuses of security.
Managing life itself.
Exactly. It marks a historical shift from merely ruling land and subjects to managing the life, health, and productivity of the population as a resource, optimizing human capital, if you will, for the greater good of the state and the economy.
And what's crucial here is that governmentality operates not just through the visible state, apparatus, laws, police, prisons, but through a far more decentralized and pervasive ensemble of institutions, families, societal discourses.
It's everywhere.
It shapes how individuals behave and act, encouraging them to self-discipline their own conduct to conform to societal norms, often without explicit coercion. Think about public health campaigns around diet and exercise. The state isn't just telling you to be healthy, it's shaping the environment. Food labeling, school lunches, urban planning, encouraging walking, and encouraging you to internalize and self-regulate your health choices.
Right, making it feel like your own idea.
Precisely. It's about producing a healthy and productive population, not just through laws, but through this dispersed web of incentives, knowledge, and social norms. A subtle, pervasive form of power, creating a citizenry that manages itself.
Paradoxically, though, the sources tell us that this very global connectivity, this intricate network of information and control, can fuel social fragmentation and local disconnection.
That's a worrying thought.
It hollows out traditional institutions like the nation-state, transforming it into a weaker network state, forced to negotiate with other powerful actors like multinational corporations and global NGOs. And this also atomizes individuals, isolates them, creating a vacuum of meaning that's often filled by a retreat into tribal identities, narrow ideologies, or online echo chambers. It's a deeply destabilizing effect on social cohesion, where the very forces intended to connect us can, in fact, drive us apart.
You know, what's truly striking is how prophetic Norbert Wiener, the founder of cybernetics himself, was about these dangers.
Even back then.
Oh yes, even as he pioneered the technology, he expressed profound warnings. He feared it could lead to the concentration of power and the inhuman use of human beings.
Yeah.
He envisioned a future where individuals might be treated as mere cogs on levers and rods in a grand machine, rather than as autonomous agents with inherent dignity. His concerns were deeply ethical, centered on the potential for technology to dehumanize and subjugate.
He saw humanity's struggle as one against a great torrent of disorganization, or entropy, right? By continually creating these arbitrary enclaves of order and system.
A constant battle.
He believed our very existence is this battle against the universe's tendency toward disorder, but he recognized that this struggle is amplified by technology. Technology offers new possibilities, sure, but it also imposes new restrictions, forcing us to constantly modify ourselves to exist in these new technologically mediated environments. It's a relentless adaptive challenge where the tools we create for order can also, ironically, reshape our humanity.
Wiener even conducted this chilling thought experiment. He envisioned a machine D-governor, a prodigious Leviathan state.
Scene governor.
Yeah, that through scientific control and probabilistic reasoning could ensure the statistical happiness of the masses. It might optimize for average health or economic output, for example. But he warned this would come at the terrible cost of deliberate and conscious primitive injustice, a world worse than hell for every clear mind. This system might appear to optimize for the many, but it would crush individual spirit, personal freedom, moral integrity for the sake of aggregate stability, a deeply dystopian vision of perfectly managed misery. So for Wiener, the real danger wasn't like Skynet, machines achieving autonomous control and rising against us. No, not primarily. He stressed that the true peril lay in humans using such machines or machine-like political techniques to increase control over others. His writings were a powerful critique of government-science partnerships that centralize power, turning individuals into mere data points, components in a larger system, rather than respecting their inherent worth. He saw the danger not in rogue AI, but in human ambition fueled by powerful tools.
And he passionately advocated for scientists to understand human nature and purposes when wielding knowledge, didn't he?
He absolutely did. He believed that entrusting crucial decisions to literal-minded machines without fully understanding their principles or the profound human implications of their actions was to cast his responsibility to the winds. This ethical imperative was central to his philosophy. He urged a moral compass to guide technological advancement, especially as it touched upon human governance and freedom. The technologist, he argued, bears a heavy burden of foresight and responsibility.
Wiener also saw a second industrial revolution emerging, fundamentally distinct from the first.
Right, the first replaced muscle power.
Exactly, revolutionizing physical labor. This new second revolution, though, concerned the machine purely as an alternative to human muscle in the realm of thought, and, crucially, the profound impact of communicative machines. He also noted something interesting, that information itself, unlike matter or energy, isn't conserved. It tends to decrease, like entropy increases, meaning information requires constant effort and energy to maintain and transmit accurately. This makes the value, flow, and potential degradation of information critically important in these new systems.
And even true on that tragic tale, the monkey's paw, you know the story.
Oh yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. He warned that we risk putting ourselves in the position of the father, who makes wishes without understanding the literal, unforgiving nature of how they are granted. He cautioned, "Woe to us if we let literal-minded machines decide our conduct without fully examining the laws of their action, because they will interpret our commands with a cold, amoral logic that could lead to our ruin." It's a powerful metaphor for the unintended, often devastating consequences of uncritical technological reliance and unexamined desires.
Wow. Okay, switching gears again, but staying with power. Let's turn to a much older, yet equally insightful master of power dynamics, Niccolo Machiavelli.
Oh, Machiavelli. Can't talk power without him.
His advice to rulers remains shockingly relevant. When a prince acquires new principalities, especially those accustomed to freedom, he has three stark, almost brutal choices, Machiavelli tells us. Ruin them, reside their own person, or permit them to live under their own laws, drawing a tribute and establishing an oligarchy. So for a ruler intent on long-term control, which of these pragmatic paths is deemed the most effective?
Well, Machiavelli unequivocally warns that cities accustomed to freedom are inherently the hardest to hold on to.
Why is that?
He explains they possess more vitality, greater hatred, and more desire of vengeance. Such people, having tasted liberty, will never permit the memory of their former liberty to rest, making destruction or direct residence by the prince himself the safest, albeit harshest, options. He understood that the human spirit's yearning for self-governance is a powerful, enduring force. It can't just be suppressed. It must be utterly eradicated or meticulously managed. Leaving them with a memory of freedom is basically inviting perpetual rebellion.
And Machiavelli stresses that truly great princes acquire new states not just through the fickle hand of fortune, but through one's own arms and ability, their own skill, foresight, decisive action.
It's about agency.
Exactly. They're not simply lucky, they actively carve out their own destiny, asserting their will through competence and strength rather than relying on chance or the goodwill of others. It emphasizes personal agency and an almost ruthless self-reliance and leadership.
He also famously and vehemently warned against using mercenary armies. He called them useless and dangerous.
Why so useless?
He saw them as ambitious, disloyal, prone to aspiring to their own greatness, potentially oppressing their master, or, crucially, failing him disastrously in battle when true courage was needed. For Machiavelli, the prince must go in person and perform the duty of a captain, directly leading and inspiring his own forces. Loyalty, discipline, a shared commitment, these are crucial for true power, and you almost never find them in paid, uncommitted foreign soldiers.
Okay, this is perhaps Machiavelli's most controversial and enduring point, the one that really sets him apart. A prince need not make himself uneasy at incurring a reproach for those vices, without which a state can only be saved with difficulty.
The ends justify the means.
Pretty much. He argues that what often looks like virtue can paradoxically lead to a ruler's ruin, while something else which looks like vice yet follows brings him security and prosperity. It's a brutal pragmatism that flips conventional morality on its head, suggesting a leader's primary duty is the survival and stability of the state, even if it requires actions typically deemed immoral.
Take the virtue of liberality, or generosity. While appearing virtuous, Machiavelli argues that a prince who is truly liberal will quickly exhaust his resources trying to maintain that image. This leads him to become poor and despised. Or, to avoid poverty, he might become rapacious and hated by excessively taxing his subjects.
So neither is good.
Right. It is therefore wiser to have a reputation for meanness, which brings reproach without hatred. This isn't about being evil for evil's sake, but about making cold, calculated decisions to preserve power and resources, which, for Machiavelli, is the ultimate good of the state. It's a kind of utilitarian ethics, where the means are justified by the end of maintaining power and stability.
And the classic Machiavellian question, often distilled to its core, is it better to be feared than loved?
The eternal question.
His conclusion, it is safer to be feared if you cannot be both. But above all, a prince must avoid hatred.
Hatred is the critical line.
Exactly. Once crossed, it makes a ruler vulnerable to conspiracies and popular uprising. Love is fickle, can be broken, but fear of punishment is a powerful, constant motivator that keeps subjects in line as long as that fear doesn't curdle into outright loathing.
He even speaks of severities being properly used. Think about that phrasing, properly used.
Right.
If they are applied at one blow and are necessary to one's security, and that are not persisted in afterwards unless they can be turned to the advantage of the subjects. He uses Alvarado da Fermo as a cautionary tale of cruelty badly used, a leader whose cruelties weren't swift, weren't for clear public advantage, and eventually led to his downfall. This demonstrates a cold, calculated approach to violence, where its efficacy for stability, not moral abhorrence, is the sole measure. Use force judiciously, not sadistically.
Machiavelli also notes that few conspiracies actually succeed. Why? Because conspirators, by their nature, must confide in malcontents who can easily betray them for gain or out of fear.
The inherent risk.
Right. The prince, in contrast, has the majesty of the principality, the laws, and the protection of friends and the state to defend him. He has institutional power, legitimacy, deterrence that the conspirator lacks, making a plot against him inherently risky and often doomed.
Crucially, though, Machiavelli advises that a prince should reckon conspiracies of little account when his people hold him in esteem.
The people's support matters.
Immensely. Conversely, if the people are hostile, he ought to fear everything and everybody, because then even the slightest discontent can spark rebellion. So even in an autocratic system, public opinion is a potent force. A prince who maintains the goodwill of his people, even if obtained through artful propaganda and calculated appearances, has a powerful buffer against internal threats. It highlights the political necessity of public support, whatever its true source.
Finally, on the matter of advice, Machiavelli makes a stark claim. Good counsels, whensoever they come, are born of the wisdom of the prince, and not the wisdom of the prince from good counsels.
Interesting. The wisdom comes from the top.
It suggests that a wise ruler doesn't just passively receive good advice. Their own inherent wisdom, their capacity for critical judgment and strategic thinking, is the ultimate source of effective counsel and decision-making. The leader's judgment is paramount. Advisors merely feed into an already discerning mind.
And yet even Machiavelli, the ultimate pragmatist of power, acknowledges limits to human control.
Even he admits it.
Yes, he states that God is not willing to do everything and thus take away our free will and that share of glory that belongs to us. Fortune certainly plays a role in human affairs, bringing unpredictable events and circumstances, he concedes. But human action and wisdom, the ability to adapt, to seize opportunity, remain absolutely essential. It's a nod to the unpredictable elements of life, even for the most calculating prince. A recognition that while we can strive to control, ultimate mastery is often beyond our grasp.
A dose of humility, even from Machiavelli.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. Really, from the pervasive, often unseen influence of propaganda shaping our thoughts and desires, to the cybernetic blueprints, helping us understand the complex, self-regulating systems of our economy, that mighty Leviathan in our government, the endlessly regenerating Ouroboros.
Yeah.
We've wrestled with ancient wisdom on power from Hobbes and Machiavelli, exploring the stark imperatives of control and survival. And we confronted modern warnings from the pioneers of cybernetics, particularly Norbert Wiener, of the potential loss of human agency in an increasingly automated, controlled world.
You, listening, now have, hopefully, a richer, more complex lens through which to view the world around you. You can start recognizing the invisible government at work, maybe discerning the signals and feedback loops of power in both economic and political systems, and questioning the forces that shape public opinion and collective behavior. This isn't just theory, right? It's about understanding the practical realities of how power is formed, maintained, and how it impacts your daily life. It encourages a deeper, more critical engagement with the structures that govern our society. Armed with this knowledge, you're hopefully better equipped to see the world as it truly operates.
And as we conclude, let's just circle back to Norbert Wiener's profound warning. The real danger isn't machines achieving autonomous control, but humans using machine-like techniques to control others, creating that world worse than hell for every clear mind. In a world increasingly shaped by algorithmic governance and the constant battle of codes between the economic Leviathan and the governmental Ouroboros, we have to ask ourselves, how might our individual choices, our collective understanding today, influence whether these powerful systems serve us? Or whether we, as Wiener feared, become mere cogs and levers and rods in an ever-optimizing machinery? What role does our continuous pursuit of knowledge, like what we've explored today, play in preserving true human agency in this complex, evolving landscape, and ensuring that the future aligns more with human dignity than with just, statistical happiness?
A lot to think about.